I was running through the rain in downtown Boston trying to get home after a double shift at the diner when I saw a man collapsed on the sidewalk, and everyone was just walking past him like he was invisible. And something in me couldn't just keep going, so I stopped. And that decision, that one moment of choosing to help a stranger, would change my entire life in ways I could never have imagined. My name is Claire Matthews, I'm 27 years old, and I've been struggling to survive in Boston for the past 5 years, working 2 jobs to afford a tiny apartment in a building that should have been condemned years ago. The night I found that man in the rain was a Tuesday in late November, and I remember thinking as I ran through the storm that this was exactly the kind of day that made me question why I ever left my small town in Maine to chase dreams in the city. Let me start from the beginning because nothing about what happened makes sense without understanding who I was before that night and how I ended up in a situation where I was working myself to death just to survive in a city that seemed designed to crush people like me. I grew up in a town called Bridgeton, population 3,000, located about 2 hours north of Boston in the middle of nowhere, Maine. My parents died in a car accident when I was 16, leaving me and my younger sister Hannah to be raised by our grandmother. Gram was amazing, but she didn't have much money, just her Social Security and a small pension from the factory where she had worked for 40 years before it closed down and moved production overseas. I remember the day my parents died with a clarity that still hurts, even 11 years later. It was a Saturday in March, and they had driven to Portland to celebrate their anniversary. They were supposed to be home by dinner time, but 6 o'clock came and went, and then 7, and then 8. Gram kept calling their cell phones, but no one answered. At 9:30, the police showed up at our door, and I knew before they said anything that something terrible had happened. A drunk driver had crossed the center line on Route 1. My parents died instantly, the officers told us. They didn't suffer. I was 16 and Hannah was 12, and suddenly we were orphans. The funeral was a blur. The whole town showed up because that's what small towns do. People brought casseroles and hugged us and said things like, "They're in a better place and God has a plan." But none of it helped. Nothing helped. I graduated high school 2 years later and knew I needed to do something to help support Hannah and Gram. College had been my dream, but it felt selfish to pursue education when my family needed money. So instead of going to college like I had planned, I started working. I worked at the local grocery store during the day, stocking shelves and running the register. I worked cleaning houses on weekends for the wealthy summer people who had vacation homes on the lake. I saved every penny I could, putting it in a coffee can that I kept hidden in my closet. The work was exhausting and monotonous, but I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once Hannah finished high school and could take care of herself, I would figure out my own path. Those 4 years felt like an eternity. I watched my friends go off to college and start their lives while I stayed stuck in Bridgeton. I watched Hannah grow from a grieving 12-year-old into a smart, confident teenager. I watched Gram get older and more tired, and I watched my dreams of being a writer fade a little more each day. When Hannah graduated high school, she got a full scholarship to the University of Maine. Full ride, everything covered. I cried when she got the acceptance letter because I was so proud of her, and also because for the first time in 4 years, I felt like maybe I could finally pursue my own dreams. I had saved about $8,000 by that point. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get started. I had always wanted to be a writer. Not just any writer, but a journalist. Someone who could tell important stories about real people. Someone who can make a difference. I spent hours researching journalism programs and newspapers and opportunities, and I kept coming back to Boston. Boston had newspapers and magazines and online publications. Boston had opportunities. Boston was where I needed to be. So at 22 years old, I packed a bag, said goodbye to Gram and Hannah, and moved to Boston with my $8,000 and a dream. I thought it would be easy. I thought that my passion and determination would be enough. I thought wrong. The first shock was how expensive everything was. I had researched apartments online, but seeing them in person was different. The cheapest studio I could find was $1,200 a month, and it was in Roxbury, in a neighborhood that made me nervous to walk alone at night. But I took it because I didn't have other options. First month, last month, and security deposit took $3,600 right away. Suddenly, my $8,000 didn't seem like so much. I spent 6 months applying to every publication in the city. The Boston Globe, the Herald, Boston Magazine, the Phoenix before it closed, Dig Boston, every neighborhood paper, every online outlet. I applied to over 100 jobs. I got exactly 3 interviews and 0 job offers. At the first interview for a small community paper in Jamaica Plain, the editor looked at my resume and asked about my experience. I don't have professional experience, I admitted, but I've been writing since I was a kid, and I'm a hard worker. We need someone who can hit the ground running, he said. I'm sorry. The second interview was for an online publication that covered local politics. It went well until they asked about my education. I didn't go to college, I said. I had to work to support my family. The interviewer, a woman probably in her 30s, looked at me with something like pity. That's admirable, she said, but we really need someone with a journalism degree, someone who understands AP style and media ethics. I understand those things, I interrupted. I studied them on my own. I'm sorry, she said. The third interview was for a position writing web content for a real estate company. It wasn't journalism, but it was writing, and I needed a job. The interviews seemed to go well. They said they would be in touch. They never called back. My savings ran out after 4 months. I had been so careful budgeting for food, taking the bus everywhere, never going out, but rent alone was eating through my money, and I hadn't accounted for how expensive everything else would be. Groceries cost twice what they did in Maine. The T-Pass was $90 a month. I needed work clothes and professional shoes. By month 5, I was down to my last $800 and starting to panic. That's when I got a job waitressing at a 24-hour diner in Dorchester. The owner, Mike, was an older Greek guy who took one look at me and said, "You ever waitressed before?" "No," I said, "but I'm a fast learner." "You start tomorrow," he said. "Night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., pays minimum wage plus tips." I took it because I didn't have a choice. The night shift at the diner was brutal. The customers were a mix of nurses and security guards getting off work, insomniacs, drunk people sobering up, and the occasional sketchy character who made me nervous. The work itself wasn't hard, taking orders, bringing food, refilling coffee, but being on my feet for 8 hours straight while exhausted was difficult, and the tips weren't great. On a good night, I might make $50 in tips. On a bad night, maybe $20. After a few months, I realized one job wasn't enough. I was barely covering rent, let alone food and utilities and student loans that I still owed from the 1 semester I had taken at community college before my parents died. So I got a second job at a coffee shop in Kenmore Square, working from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. That meant I worked the night shift at the diner from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Then I would go home, shower, change, and be at the coffee shop by 8. I worked there until 2, then went home and tried to sleep for a few hours before starting all over again. 17 hours of work a day. 7 days a week because I needed the money and couldn't afford to take days off. I lived on coffee and adrenaline and the desperate hope that this was temporary. The coffee shop job was different from the diner. The customers were mostly students from Boston University and young professionals working at the hospitals nearby. They ordered complicated drinks with specific instructions and got annoyed if you made them wrong. My coworker at the coffee shop was a girl named Jessica, who was 21 and studying business at BU. Her parents paid for everything: her tuition, her apartment, her food. She worked at the coffee shop for spending money. She would complain about how tired she was from her 1 shift a day, and I would bite my tongue because I didn't have the energy to explain what real exhaustion felt like. I lived in that studio apartment in Roxbury that cost $800 a month, which was cheap for Boston, but still more than I could really afford on my salary. The building was old, probably built in the 1920s, and it showed. The radiator heat barely worked, and there were nights in winter when I could see my breath inside my apartment. I would pile on every blanket I owned and still shiver. The pipes banged at all hours, making sleep difficult. My apartment was on the 4th floor, and there was an elevator, but it had been broken for 2 years. The landlord kept promising to fix it, but never did. So I climbed 4 flights of stairs multiple times a day, carrying groceries and laundry and everything else.
The walls were thin enough that I could hear everything my neighbors did. The couple next door fought constantly, screaming matches that went on for hours. The guy above me played bass guitar at random times, including 3 in the morning. The family below me had a baby who cried all night. There were water stains on my ceiling from a leak that the landlord also kept promising to fix. The bathroom window didn't close all the way, which meant bugs got in during the summer and cold air got in during the winter. The kitchen was so small I could barely turn around in it. There was no dishwasher, just a tiny sink that was always full of dishes I was too tired to wash. But it was mine. It was the first place I'd ever lived alone, and even though it was falling apart, I had tried to make it feel like home. I hung curtains I bought at a thrift store for $5, sheer white ones that let in light and made the space feel less depressing. I painted the walls a pale yellow, even though my lease said I wasn't supposed to paint. I figured the landlord probably wouldn't notice, and if he did, I would just paint them back to the ugly beige they had been. I bought plants from the farmer's market, a spider plant and a pothos that supposedly were hard to kill. They somehow survived despite the lack of natural light and my frequent neglect. I put up string lights around the window to make the space feel cozier. I bought a rug for $10 at a yard sale. I found a bookshelf on the street that someone was throwing away and dragged it up 4 flights of stairs by myself. I filled it with books from the library sale, $1 a bag. I told myself this was temporary, that I was paying my dues, that eventually I would get my big break and everything would change, that I would get hired as a journalist and would make enough money to live comfortably, that I would move to a better apartment in a better neighborhood, that I would be able to help Graham financially and visit Hannah more often, that I would finally become the person I was supposed to be. 5 years later, I was still waiting, still working 2 jobs, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, still barely making rent, still too exhausted to write, still dreaming of being a journalist, but too tired to actually pursue it. I had tried writing in my spare time, but there was no spare time. When I wasn't working, I was sleeping. And when I was supposed to be sleeping, I was often awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to my neighbors, and wondering how my life had ended up like this.
I kept in touch with Hannah as much as I could. She was thriving at the University of Maine, majoring in biology with plans to go to medical school. She called me every week to tell me about her classes and her friends and her life. I was so proud of her, but I also felt jealous sometimes, which made me feel guilty. She was living the life I had wanted. She was getting an education and pursuing her dreams, and she was able to do it because I had sacrificed my dreams for her. I never told her that. I never wanted her to feel guilty. It wasn't her fault that our parents died. It wasn't her fault that I chose to work instead of going to college. Those were my choices, and I had to live with them. Graham was getting older and more frail. She was 78 now, and her health was declining. She had arthritis that made it hard for her to do basic things like open jars or button her shirts. She had high blood pressure and diabetes. She was on a dozen different medications that cost money she didn't have. I tried to send her money when I could. $50 here, $100 there. It wasn't much, but it was all I could spare. She would call me crying and thanking me, and I would feel guilty because I couldn't send more. I should have been there, taking care of her, but I was stuck in Boston, barely surviving. That Tuesday in November started like every other day. I finished my shift at the diner at 7 a.m. I was exhausted, having been on my feet for 8 hours straight. But there was one bright spot. A businessman in an expensive suit had come in around 6 a.m., ordered breakfast, and left me a $10 tip on a $40 check. 25%! That almost never happened at the diner. Most people left $1 or $2 if they left anything at all. $10 felt like winning the lottery. I was in a good mood despite being exhausted. I took the bus home, climbed the 4 flights of stairs to my apartment, and took a quick shower. The hot water only lasted about 5 minutes before turning lukewarm, but it was enough. I changed into my coffee shop uniform and headed out. The shift at the coffee shop was busy.
Tuesday morning rush meant everyone ordering complicated drinks and being impatient about wait times. A woman yelled at me because her soy latte had almond milk instead. A man complained that his coffee wasn't hot enough even though I had just poured it. A student knocked over a full cup of iced coffee and then got mad at me for not cleaning it up fast enough. My coworker Jessica called in sick, which meant I had to cover her station too. That meant I was making drinks, taking orders, running the register, and cleaning all at the same time. By the time 2 p.m. rolled around, my feet were aching, my back hurt, and I had coffee stains on my shirt. But I had made $40 in tips, which was pretty good. Combined with the $10 from the diner that morning, I had made $50 in tips. That would pay for groceries this week. I took the bus home, planning to sleep for a few hours before my shift at the diner. But when I got to my building, there was a notice taped to the front door. I almost walked past it, but something made me stop and read it. Notice of building sale, it read in bold letters. This property has been sold. All tenants will receive formal notification regarding lease terms within 30 days. My stomach dropped. The building had been sold. I felt panic rising in my chest. I ran up the 4 flights of stairs faster than I ever had before. I was out of breath by the time I reached my apartment. I found the same notice slipped under my door. I picked it up with shaking hands and read it 3 times, trying to understand what it meant. The building had been sold, but to whom? And what did it mean for me? For all of us who lived here? I tried to think rationally. Maybe the new owner would keep everything the same. Maybe they would even fix things like the elevator and the heating. Maybe this would be a good thing. But I knew better. Buildings in Boston didn't get sold to owners who kept rents the same. They got sold to developers who wanted to renovate and flip them, who wanted to turn affordable housing into luxury apartments, who wanted to kick out people like me and replace us with people who could afford to pay 3 times the rent. I called the number on the notice and got a voicemail for some property management company I had never heard of. I left a message asking for more information, trying to keep my voice calm even though I was terrified. "Please call me back," I said. "I need to know what's happening with my apartment." I tried to sleep but couldn't. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the couple next door arguing and the baby downstairs crying and the bass guitar upstairs thumping. I kept thinking about what would happen if the new owner raised the rent. I was already barely affording $800 a month. If they raised it to $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500 like so many apartments in Boston cost, I would have no choice but to move. But move where? I couldn't afford anywhere else in the city. I would have to leave Boston, go back to Maine, give up on my dreams completely? The thought made me feel sick. I had already sacrificed so much. I couldn't give up now. At 10 p.m., I gave up on sleep and got ready for my shift at the diner. I put on my uniform and grabbed my jacket. The rain had started around 9, and by the time I left my apartment at 10:30, it was coming down in sheets. I didn't have an umbrella because my last one had broken 3 weeks ago, and I hadn't had money to replace it. I had looked at umbrellas at the dollar store, but even the cheap ones were $10 or $12, and I kept thinking that was a meal I could buy instead. So I pulled my hood up and started walking. The diner was about a mile from my apartment. Normally I would take the bus because it was only $2.50, but lately I had been trying to save money by walking when I could. $5 a day doesn't sound like much, but over a week it was $35. Over a month, it was $140. That was groceries. That was my electric bill. That was money I desperately needed. Tonight, I regretted the decision to walk. The rain was cold and heavy, soaking through my jacket within minutes. My shoes, which were old and worn, developed a leak, and my socks got wet. My feet squelched with every step. I was walking fast, partly because I was trying to get to work on time, and partly because I was trying to stay warm. My manager, Jerry, had a 3 strikes policy. 3 late arrivals and you were fired.
I was at 2 strikes. One more and I would lose this job. I couldn't afford to lose this job. I was about halfway to the diner, walking down Washington Street, when I saw him. A man lying on the sidewalk in front of a closed bank. He was wearing what looked like an expensive suit, but it was soaked through and mud-stained. His face was pale, almost gray. His lips looked blue, and people were just walking past him. I stopped and stared, trying to understand what I was seeing. A woman in a business suit stepped over him without even looking down. A couple crossed to the other side of the street to avoid him. A group of college kids walked past laughing about something completely oblivious. I stood there, frozen. I was already late for work. I was soaking wet and freezing. I had my own problems. This wasn't my responsibility, but I couldn't just keep walking. Something in me physically couldn't do it. I knelt down next to him, feeling the cold, wet concrete soak through my pants. "Sir," I said, touching his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" He didn't respond. I shook him gently. "Sir?" Nothing. I put my fingers to his neck the way I had learned in a first aid class years ago, checking for a pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. His skin was cold, too cold. I pulled out my phone and called 911. My hands were shaking from cold and fear. "I need an ambulance," I said when the operator answered. "There's a man collapsed on the sidewalk, corner of Washington and Temple. He's breathing but barely responsive." The operator started asking me questions. What was his condition? Was he injured? Was he conscious? I answered as best I could. "No, I don't see any blood. No, he's not conscious. Yes, he's breathing, but it's shallow. I don't know if he took anything. I don't know anything about him. I just found him." She told me an ambulance was on the way and to stay with him. "Don't leave him alone," she said. "Make sure he keeps breathing." I stayed kneeling there in the rain. I took off my jacket, even though it was already soaked, and put it over him, trying to keep him warm. It probably didn't help much, but I didn't know what else to do. His eyes fluttered open for a second. They were dark brown and unfocused. "Help," he whispered. "It's okay," I said, even though nothing was okay. "Help is coming. Just hold on." His eyes closed again. I kept my hand on his shoulder, talking to him even though I didn't know if he could hear me. "You're going to be okay. The ambulance is coming. Stay with me." I could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. People continued walking past. Some glanced at us, but most just kept going. I thought about that, about how easy it was for people to ignore suffering, about how we all just keep walking past problems that aren't ours, about how disconnected we've become from each other. The ambulance arrived about 5 minutes later, though it felt like much longer. The paramedics jumped out and took over. I stood up, backing away to give them room. One of them, a young guy, started checking the man's vital signs. The other one, a woman, probably in her 40s, came over to me. "Did you see what happened?" she asked. "No," I said. "I just found him like this. How long has he been down?" "I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes before I got here. People were walking past him." "You called it in?" "Yes." She looked at me with something like approval. "You might have saved his life," she said. "If he had been out here much longer in this cold, in this rain..." She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. They loaded him onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. The female paramedic came back over to me. "What's your name?" she asked. "Claire." "Claire Matthews." "We'll need your contact information," she said, "for the report." I gave her my number and address. She wrote it down. "Thank you, Claire," she said. "You did a good thing tonight." The ambulance drove away, sirens blaring. I stood there on the sidewalk in the rain. I realized I no longer had my jacket. The man had it. The man whose name I didn't even know. I was freezing, soaking wet, and now definitely late for work. I checked my phone. 10:57. My shift started at 11. I was going to be at least 15 minutes late, maybe 20. Strike 3. I ran the rest of the way to the diner. My wet shoes slipped on the sidewalk and I almost fell twice. When I finally pushed through the door at 11:14, Jerry was standing behind the counter with his arms crossed. "You're 14 minutes late," he said. "I know," I said, breathing hard from running. "I'm so sorry. I had to help someone. There was an emergency." "An emergency," he repeated skeptically. "Yes, a man collapsed on the street and I called 911 and waited with him until the ambulance came." Jerry sighed. He was probably in his 50s with gray hair and a beer belly. He had owned the diner for 20 years and had seen everything. "Claire, I like you," he said. "You're a good worker, but I can't keep making exceptions. This is the 3rd time this month you've been late." "I know," I said, "and I'm really sorry, but this was different. A man was dying on the sidewalk. I couldn't just walk past him." "I understand that," he said, "but I have a business to run. I meet people I can count on to be here on time." "I'll stay late," I said. "I'll work an extra hour for free to make up for it." He looked at me for a long moment. "Fine," he said. "But Claire, next time you're late even 1 minute, I'm going to have to let you go. Do you understand?" "I understand," I said. "Thank you." "Go get changed," he said, "and dry off as much as you can. You're dripping all over my floor." I went to the back room and changed into my uniform. My work pants and shirt that I kept in my locker. I tried to dry my hair with paper towels, but it didn't help much. I looked in the mirror and saw a wet, exhausted person staring back at me. I barely recognized myself. The shift was long and slow. Only a handful of customers came in, and the tips were terrible. By the end of my 8 hours, I had made maybe $20. Combined with my tips from the diner that morning and the coffee shop that afternoon, I had made about $70 total for the day. That might sound like a lot, but after taxes and Social Security were taken out of my actual wages, the tips were basically my real income. $70 for 17 hours of work, about $4 an hour, less than minimum wage. But it was what I had. When my shift ended at 7 a.m., I walked home in the early morning light. The rain had stopped, but everything was still wet and gray, puddles everywhere, the sky heavy with clouds. I climbed the 4 flights of stairs to my apartment, feeling every step in my aching legs. I collapsed on my bed, still in my uniform, too tired to even change into pajamas, too tired to brush my teeth or wash my face. I was asleep in seconds. I woke up at noon when my phone rang. I grabbed it without looking at the screen. "Hello?" I said, my voice hoarse from sleep. "Is this Claire Matthews?" a man's voice asked. "Yes," I said, sitting up. "Who is this?" "My name is Richard Chen," he said. "I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Harrison Blake." "Okay," I said, confused. "Mr. Blake wanted me to reach out to you," he said. "You helped me last night when I collapsed on Washington Street. You called the ambulance." "Oh," I said, fully awake now. "Is he okay?" "He's going to be fine, thanks to you," Richard said. "He had a cardiac event, a heart attack. The doctor said if he had been out there much longer, he might not have made it." "I'm glad he's okay," I said. "Mr. Blake would like to thank you in person," Richard said. "Would you be available to meet him today?" I said, thinking about my shift at the coffee shop. "I have to work at 3. What time were you thinking?" "He could meet you at 1 if that works," Richard said. "There's a coffee shop on Newbury Street called Tate. Do you know it?" "I know where Newbury Street is," I said. It was the fancy shopping district, the place where wealthy people shopped, and I definitely did not belong. 1 o'clock then," Richard said. "Mr. Blake is looking forward to meeting you." He hung up before I could ask any more questions. I sat there holding my phone, feeling confused. Why would this man want to meet me? To say thank you, I guess? But that seemed like a lot of effort just to say thanks. I could have just accepted his gratitude over the phone. I looked at the time. 12:15. I had 45 minutes to get ready and get to Newbury Street. I got up and looked through my closet for something to wear. Everything I owned was old and worn from too many washes and not enough money to replace things. I settled on black pants that only had one small stain on the thigh that I could kind of hide with my hand, and a gray sweater that had a small hole near the hem but otherwise looked presentable. I took a quick shower in lukewarm water because the hot water heater in the building was inadequate. I dried my hair as best I could and put on a little makeup. Not much because I didn't own much, just some concealer to hide the dark circles under my eyes and some mascara. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired and worn, but at least clean. I took the T to Copley Station. The fare was $2.50, which I paid with quarters and dimes from the jar I kept on my counter. I walked from Copley to Newberry Street. The rain had started again, a light drizzle that made everything look gray and miserable. I found Tate and stood outside for a moment looking through the window. It was one of those trendy, expensive coffee shops with marble counters and velvet chairs and pastries that probably cost $8 each. I felt completely out of place. But I had come this far. I went inside. The warmth hit me immediately. It smelled like coffee and fresh bread and money. Everyone inside looked expensive. Women in designer coats carrying Louis Vuitton bags, men in suits checking their phones. I stood near the door, looking around nervously, wondering how I would even recognize this Harrison Blake person. "Ms. Matthews," a voice said behind me. I turned to see a man, probably in his 50s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He was Asian with short black hair streaked with gray. "Richard Chen," he said, extending his hand. "We spoke on the phone." "Nice to meet you," I said, shaking his hand. "Mr. Blake is in the back," he said. "Follow me, please." We walked through the crowded coffee shop to a corner table where a man was sitting. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with dark hair that had gray at the temples and lines around his eyes that suggested he spent a lot of time either smiling or frowning. I couldn't tell which. He was wearing casual clothes, an expensive-looking sweater and dark jeans, but somehow still looked like he owned the place. He stood when he saw me. "Ms. Matthews," he said, "thank you so much for coming. Please sit." I sat down in the velvet chair across from him, and Richard excused himself, leaving us alone. "Can I get you something, Mr. Blake? Coffee, tea, pastry, whatever you'd like." "I'm okay," I said, even though I would have loved a coffee. I couldn't afford the prices here, and I was too proud to let a stranger buy me one. "Please," he said, "I insist. You saved my life. The least I can do is buy you coffee." "A latte," I said, quietly. "Thank you." He got up and went to the counter to order. I sat there, feeling out of place and wondering what I was doing here. He came back a few minutes later carrying 2 lattes and a plate with pastries. "I got a few different things," he said. "I wasn't sure what you liked." "Thank you," I said, taking one of the lattes. He sat down and looked at me. "I wanted to thank you in person," he said. "What you did last night, stopping to help me when everyone else just walked by, that was extraordinary." "I just did what anyone would," I said, taking a sip of the latte.
It was delicious. Probably the best coffee I had ever tasted. "No, you did what most people wouldn't do," he said. "Do you know how long I was lying there on that sidewalk before you stopped?" I shook my head. "At least 15 minutes, he said. Maybe longer. Dozens of people walked past me, stepped over me, crossed the street to avoid me. Not one person stopped to check if I was okay. Until you." "I'm sorry that happened," I said. "Don't be sorry," he said. "Be proud. What you did took courage and compassion. Those are rare qualities." I didn't know what to say, so I just took another sip of my coffee. "The paramedic told me you might have saved my life," I said. "She said if you had been out there much longer in the cold..." I trailed off. "She was right," he said. "According to my doctors, I was in full cardiac arrest." My heart had stopped. If the paramedics hadn't around even 5 minutes later, I probably would have died. I felt a chill run through me. I didn't realize it was that serious. "Neither did I," he said. "One minute I was walking to my car after a meeting. The next minute I was on the ground, and I couldn't breathe or move or call for help. And people just walked past me like I was garbage." "That must have been terrifying," I said. "It was," he said. "But then you came, and you stopped, and you called for help, and you stayed with me." He looked at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "You have no idea what that meant to me," he said. "To know that someone cared enough to help." I shifted in my seat. "I'm just glad you're okay." "I am okay, thanks to you," he said. And now I want to repay that kindness. You don't need to repay me, I said. I want to, he said. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you stop? He asked. You looked like you were in a hurry, you were soaking wet, you had every reason to keep walking, but you stopped. Why? I thought about it. I don't know, I said. I guess I just couldn't not stop. I saw you lying there and I thought about how I would want someone to help me if I was in that situation. And I thought about my parents, how they always taught me to help people when I could. Your parents sound like wonderful people, he said. They were, I said quietly. They died when I was 16. I'm so sorry, he said. And something in his voice made me believe he really was sorry. Not just saying it to be polite, but actually feeling sympathy. Thank you, I said. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, Can I ask you about yourself? What would you like to know? What do you do for work? He asked. I work 2 jobs, I said. I waitress at a diner at night, and I work at a coffee shop during the day. That must be exhausting. It is, I admitted, but I need the money. Do you mind if I ask why you need 2 jobs? He asked. Are you supporting family, trying to pay off debt? I hesitated. I wasn't sure why I was telling this stranger about my life, but something about him made me want to be honest. I came to Boston 5 years ago, I said. I wanted to be a journalist, but no one would hire me because I didn't have experience, and I couldn't get experience without someone giving me a chance. So I've been working these jobs, trying to survive while I figure out what to do next. He listened without interrupting, and in the meantime, I said, I am barely making rent, barely affording food, sending what little I can to my grandmother in Maine, who raised me and my sister after our parents died. That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age, he said. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? 27. 27, he repeated. And you've been working 2 jobs for 5 years? Yes. That takes strength, he said. A lot of people would have given up and gone home. I thought about giving up, I admitted, more times than I can count. But I didn't want to feel like I had failed. I didn't want to go back to Maine with nothing to show for 5 years except exhaustion and debt. He nodded slowly. I understand that, he said. The fear of failure, the drive to prove yourself. I've felt that too. You, I said, looking at him in his expensive clothes, sitting in this expensive coffee shop, you felt like a failure? Everyone feels like that at some point, he said. No matter how successful you become, there's always that voice in your head telling you you're not good enough, that you don't deserve what you have, that you're going to lose it all. I never thought about it that way, I said. We talked for another hour about everything and nothing. He told me he grew up in San Francisco, that his parents were immigrants from Taiwan who worked in restaurants to support him and his siblings, that he worked his way through college and business school, that he started his company Blake Industries 20 years ago with money he borrowed from friends and family, that he had built it into one of the largest real estate development companies in New England. And I told him about growing up in Maine, about my parents' death, about raising my sister with my grandmother, about my dreams of being a writer that I had put on hold to survive. He listened to everything I said like it mattered, like I mattered. Finally, I looked at my phone and realized it was 2:30. I have to go, I said. I'm sorry, I have to be at work at 3. Before you go, he said, there's something I want to tell you. Okay. When Richard called you this morning, he said, I hope you don't mind, but we got your address from the hospital records. You live on Humble Avenue in Roxbury. Yes, I said slowly. I know that building, he said. In fact, I just bought it. I felt my stomach drop. What? Yesterday morning, he said, I closed on the purchase of that building, along with 2 others in the neighborhood. We're planning to renovate them, bring them up to code, make them more energy efficient. That was you, I said. The notice on the door, that was you. That was me, he confirmed. I'm sorry you found out that way. We're still working out the details of how to notify tenants properly. So I'm being evicted, I said, feeling panic rising. Not exactly, he said. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. What do you mean? I want to make you an offer, he said. What kind of offer? Stay in your apartment, he said. I'll renovate it, update everything.
New floors, new appliances, new bathroom, new everything.
and I'll freeze your rent at your current rate for as long as you live there." I stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because you saved my life," he said, "and because I can." "This is too much," I said. "It's not charity, if that's what you're worried about," he said. "Think of it as a thank you, a way of ensuring you don't have to worry about housing while you pursue your dreams." "But why?" I asked. "Why me? Why not the other tenants?" "I'm offering similar arrangements to several other tenants," he said, "particularly the elderly residents and the families with children, people who can't easily afford to move, people who need stability. But you're the reason I'm able to do this at all. If you hadn't stopped last night, I would be dead." I felt overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said. "Say you'll let me do this for you." I thought about my apartment with its water-stained ceiling and broken heater and thin walls. I thought about the notice on the door and my fear of being evicted. I thought about what this could mean. A renovated apartment, rent frozen at $800 a month, one less thing to worry about. "Okay," I said. "Yes." "Good," he said, smiling. "Richard will be in touch with all the details, but I want you to know that this is real. This is happening." "Thank you," I said. "I don't know how else to say it." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "You saved my life. This is just me returning the favor." I left the coffee shop feeling like I was in a dream. I walked to my shift at the coffee shop in a daze. Jessica was there when I arrived. She took one look at me and said, "Are you okay? You look weird." "I'm fine," I said, "just tired." She shrugged and went back to her phone. I worked my shift on autopilot, making drinks, taking orders, cleaning up spills. My mind was somewhere else, on Harrison Blake, on his offer, on the possibility that my life might actually be changing. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. Richard contacted me with paperwork. Contractors came to assess the building and my specific apartment. Harrison, he told me to call him Harrison, was true to his word. Not only was he renovating my apartment, but he had offered similar arrangements to 12 other tenants in the building. The elderly couple on the second floor, the single mother with 3 kids on the third floor, the disabled veteran on the first floor, people who needed help and stability. 2 months after that night in the rain, I moved into a temporary unit on the second floor while they worked on my apartment. The renovation took 6 weeks. During that time, I continued working my 2 jobs, but something had changed. I felt lighter, less afraid. I knew that when the renovation was done, I would have a beautiful apartment at a rent I could afford. I knew that one massive source of stress in my life was being lifted. When they finally let me move back in, I couldn't believe it was the same space. The walls had been repainted a soft, warm white that made everything feel brighter. The floors were new hardwood that gleamed in the light. The kitchen had been completely redone, with new cabinets, painted a cheerful light gray, new countertops, new appliances, including a dishwasher, which I had never had before. The bathroom was unrecognizable. New tile, new tub, new sink, new toilet. Everything worked. The water pressure was amazing. The toilet didn't run constantly. The sink didn't drip. There were new windows that actually closed properly and kept out the cold. New radiators that actually heated the apartment. The water stains on the ceiling were gone. The hole in the bathroom wall was patched. Everything was fixed. It was more than I ever expected. It was beautiful. But the biggest change wasn't the apartment. It was what happened next. A week after I moved back into my renovated apartment, I got another call from Richard Chen. "Ms. Matthews," he said, "Harrison would like to meet with you again." "Is everything okay with the apartment?" I asked. "The apartment is perfect," he said. "This is about something else." We met at the same coffee shop on Newberry Street. Harrison was already there waiting. When he saw me, he stood and smiled. "Claire," he said, "you can call me Harrison, please." "Okay, Harrison," I said, sitting down. "What did you want to talk about?" "I've been thinking about our conversation," he said, "about how you wanted to be a journalist, a lighter." "Yes," I said, though I've kind of given up on that dream. "Why?" he asked. "Because no one will hire me," I said. "I've tried for 5 years. At some point you have to accept that it's not going to happen." "What if I told you I could give you that chance?" he said. "What do you mean?" "Blake Industries has a communications department," he said. We produce a lot of content, website copy, newsletters, press releases. We also sponsor a local journalism initiative. It's a program that covers urban development and housing issues in Boston. Real stories about how development affects communities. I'm looking for someone to run that program, someone to work with the journalists, someone to help tell those stories. And I think you'd be perfect for it. Me? I said, but I don't have any experience. You'll learn, he said. I have a great team that can train you. And more importantly, you have passion. You have a perspective. You understand what it's like to struggle, to barely make rent, to worry about housing. That's the perspective we need. But what about my jobs? I said. The diner and the coffee shop. You'd quit them, he said. This would be full-time, salary, benefits, health insurance, paid time off, reasonable hours. I felt tears starting in my eyes. How much? I asked. How much would the salary be? He named a figure. $50,000 a year. I stared at him. I started but couldn't finish. That's more than double what I was making working both jobs combined. It was more money than I had ever imagined making. Are you serious? I asked. Completely, he said. Claire, I told you before, you have talent and drive and compassion. You just need someone to believe in you and give you a chance. I'm that someone. I felt tears rolling down my cheeks, and I didn't even care that I was crying in public in this expensive coffee shop. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll take it.
Good, he said, smiling. You start in 2 weeks. That gives you time to give notice at your current jobs and to mentally prepare. I couldn't stop crying. Thank you, I said. I don't know what else to say. You don't have to say anything, he said. Just promise me you'll give this your all. I promise, I said. I won't let you down. I know you won't, he said. I quit both my jobs the next day. Jerry at the diner was disappointed, but he wished me well and gave me a hug. You deserve better than this place, he said. Go do something great. My manager at the coffee shop, Karen, was genuinely happy for me. That's amazing, she said. I always knew you were too smart to be stuck making coffee. Jessica, my coworker, seemed almost offended that I was leaving. Must be nice, she said. Some of us don't have rich people offering us jobs. I didn't respond. There was nothing I could say that would make her understand. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I bought new work clothes using some of the tip money I had saved. Nothing expensive, just some nice blouses and pants from Target and Marshall's. I researched Blake Industries and read everything I could find about their work. I looked up the journalism program I would be running and read all their past articles. I was nervous and excited and terrified all at once. My first day at Blake Industries was overwhelming. The offices were in downtown Boston, in a sleek, modern building with glass walls and expensive art, and a lobby that looked like something out of a magazine. I wore my new clothes and felt like an imposter. Everyone else looked so professional, so confident, so like they belonged. I was sure someone would realize I didn't fit and ask me to leave. But that didn't happen. Instead, I met the communications team, 5 people who were all incredibly kind and welcoming. There was Jennifer, the director, who had been at the company for 10 years, Marcus, who handled corporate communications, Lisa, who managed social media, Tom, who wrote technical content, and Sarah, who was the newest member, having joined 6 months ago. They showed me to my desk, which was in an open office space with huge windows overlooking the city. They gave me a laptop and a phone and access to all the systems I would need. They took me to lunch at a nice restaurant nearby, and they treated me like I belonged, like I was one of them. Harrison stopped by my desk that afternoon. "How's your first day going?" he asked. "It's overwhelming," I admitted, "but good." "Don't worry," he said. "It'll take some time to learn everything, but I know you can do this." "Thank you," I said, "for this opportunity, for believing in me." "You earned it," he said. "Now get back to work." He smiled and walked away. Over the next few months, I learned more than I had ever imagined possible. Jennifer taught me how to use the content management system and how to work with external writers and journalists. Marcus showed me how to write press releases and handle media inquiries. Lisa explained social media strategy and audience engagement.
Tom helped me understand technical writing and corporate communications. And Sarah became a friend. We were close in age and both relatively new to the corporate world. We had lunch together most days, and she answered all my stupid questions without making me feel stupid. The journalism program I was running was incredible. It was a partnership with a local nonprofit organization that covered housing and development issues in Boston neighborhoods. They produced in-depth articles about displacement, gentrification, affordable housing policy, real journalism that mattered. My job was to coordinate with the journalists, provide them with information and access, connect them with sources at Blake Industries, and help promote their work. It was exactly the kind of work I had dreamed of doing, and I was good at it, better than I expected. I understood the issues because I had lived them. I knew what it was like to worry about rent, to face eviction, to struggle to find affordable housing. I could talk to journalists and community members with authenticity. I could ask the right questions and understand the real impacts of development and policy decisions. Harrison checked in on me regularly, not in a micromanaging way, but in a genuinely supportive way. He would stop by my desk every week or two and ask how things were going. He would read the articles we published and send me emails with his thoughts. He would introduce me to important people in the industry. He treated me like I mattered, like my work mattered. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just surviving. I could afford groceries without checking my bank account first. I could send money to Graham without worrying about making rent. I could buy new shoes when my old ones wore out. I could save a little money each month. I could sleep more than 4 hours a night. I had health insurance, which meant I could finally go to the doctor and the dentist for the first time in years. I had paid time off, which meant I could visit Hannah and Graham in Maine without losing income. I had a retirement account with employer matching. I had stability. But the best part wasn't the money or the benefits. It was the work itself. I was learning and growing and doing something that mattered. I was writing again, not fiction or personal essays like I had once dreamed, but journalism, real journalism, about issues that affected real people. I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. 6 months after I started working at Blake Industries, Harrison invited me to lunch. Not in the office cafeteria or at the usual places the team went, but at an upscale restaurant in the Seaport. A place with white tablecloths and wine lists and prices I still couldn't quite believe. "Is this a work lunch?" I asked as we sat down. "Not exactly," he said. "I wanted to talk to you about something." "That sounds serious," I said. "Should I be worried?" "No," he said, smiling. "Nothing like that." "How are you settling in?" he asked after we ordered. "Really well," I said. "I love the work. The team is amazing. Everyone's been so helpful and supportive. I'm really grateful." "Good."
I've been getting excellent reports about you. Everyone says you're doing an incredible job. Jennifer says you're a natural at this. "Thank you," I said. "I'm trying my best." "It shows," he said. "You've exceeded every expectation I had." "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything." "Why did you really do all this?" I asked. "The apartment, the job. I mean, I'm incredibly grateful, but it seems like a lot for just calling 911 and waiting with you for an ambulance." He was quiet for a moment, looking down at his wine glass. "Do you know what it's like?" he finally said. "To be lying on a cold sidewalk in the rain, dying, and have dozens of people walk past you like you're invisible, like you're garbage, like your life doesn't matter?" I shook my head. "I can't imagine." "It changes you," he said. "It makes you question everything. Your success, your wealth, your purpose. What does any of it mean if, when you're dying alone on a sidewalk, no one even stops to check if you're okay?" He looked up at me. "And then you stopped," he said. "A complete stranger who was soaking wet and late for work and obviously struggling yourself. You stopped. You called for help. You waited with me. You gave me your jacket. You stayed even though it cost you something." I felt my throat tighten. I just did what felt right.
Exactly, he said. You did what felt right. Not what was easy or convenient, but what was right. And that's rare. More rare than you think. He paused. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world, he said. People who choose kindness, even when it costs them. People who see someone suffering and can't just walk away. And I wanted to repay that. Not just with money or a renovated apartment, but by giving you the chance to become who you were meant to be. I felt tears starting. You've changed my life, I said. I know, he said. And you changed mine. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then he said, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about. Okay? Over the past 6 months, he said, I've gotten to know you. As an employee, yes, but also as a person. I know about your dedication to your family, your work ethic, your compassion, your intelligence, your humor, your strength. And I've realized something. What? I asked, my heart starting to beat faster. That I care about you, he said, as more than an employee, more than someone I helped, more than a friend even. I care about you in a way that's probably inappropriate given that I'm your boss and significantly older than you, and that our relationship started in such unusual circumstances, but I can't help how I feel. I stared at him, not knowing what to say. Harrison, I started. I know this is complicated, he said, and if you don't feel the same way, I understand. We can pretend this conversation never happened and go back to our professional relationship. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know. I thought about it, about Harrison, about how kind he had been to me, how he had changed my life in ways I could never repay, about how easy he was to talk to, how he made me feel seen and heard and important, about how I looked forward to his visits to my desk, how I noticed when he walked into a room, how I caught myself thinking about him at odd moments. I think I feel the same way, I said quietly. You do? He asked, looking surprised. Yes, I said. I've been trying not to feel it because you're my boss and this could complicate everything. But yes, I care about you too. He reached across the table and took my hand. So what do we do about this? He asked. I don't know, I said. This could be really complicated. I know, he said. We could keep it quiet for a while, see where it goes. If it doesn't work out, no one has to know. And if it does, then we figure it out together, he said, one step at a time. Okay, I said. Let's try. That lunch was the beginning of something new between us. We started seeing each other outside of work, carefully at first. He would pick me up in his car blocks away from my apartment, and we would drive to restaurants outside Boston where no one would recognize us. We went to movies in suburban theaters. We walked through parks in different towns. We were cautious and secretive. He made it clear that my job was secure no matter what happened between us personally, that if things didn't work out, I would still have my position and he would make sure there were no professional consequences. But things did work out. We clicked in ways I hadn't expected. We would talk for hours about everything. His childhood in San Francisco and the pressure he felt as the son of immigrants to succeed. His first business failure when he was 25 and how it nearly destroyed him. His divorce 10 years ago from a woman he had married too young and for the wrong reasons. His regrets about not having children, about prioritizing work over family. My grief about my parents that I still carried after all these years. My guilt about leaving Graham and Hannah to pursue my own dreams. My fear that I wasn't good enough, that at any moment someone would realize I was a fraud. He listened to all of it, and he shared his own fears and doubts in return. I fell in love with him slowly and then all at once. Not because of his money or his position, but because of who he was. Because of the way he listened when I talked, the way he remembered small details about things I mentioned in passing, the way he made me laugh, the way he looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the world. 3 months after that first lunch, we decided to stop hiding. I don't want to sneak around anymore, he said. I want to take you to nice restaurants in the city. I want to hold your hand in public. I want people to know that we're together. But my job, I said. What will people think? Your job is secure, he said. You've more than proven yourself. And honestly, I don't care what people think. I'm 51 years old. I've spent too much of my life worrying about appearances. I just want to be happy. Are you happy? I asked. With you, yes, he said. Are you happy with me? Yes, I said. Then that's all that matters. We told the team the next week. The reactions were mixed. Jennifer was supportive and happy for us.
Marcus seemed skeptical, but kept his opinions to himself. Lisa was excited and wanted to know all the details. Tom didn't seem to care either way. Sarah pulled me aside and said, "Are you sure about this? People are going to talk." "Let them talk," I said. "I love him." "Then I'm happy for you," she said. There was gossip, of course. People speculated about how we got together, about whether I had gotten my job because of him, about whether our relationship was appropriate, but most of it died down after a few weeks. And my work spoke for itself. The journalism program I was running had won an award for its coverage of affordable housing issues. I had been interviewed by other publications about our work. I was invited to speak on panels about housing and development. I was establishing my own reputation separate from Harrison. That was 8 months ago. Since then, my life has continued to change in ways I could never have imagined. Harrison asked me to move in with him 4 months ago. Not into his penthouse, which he knew I would find too overwhelming, but into a brownstone townhouse in the South End that we looked at together and decorated together. A place that felt like ours. I said yes. We moved in 2 months ago. The townhouse is beautiful. 3 stories with exposed brick and hardwood floors and big windows that let in lots of light. We have a garden in the back where I've started growing vegetables. We have a home office where I can write. We have a guest room for when Hannah and Graham visit. It feels like home in a way that nowhere else ever has. Hannah came to visit last month. She's in her 3rd year of medical school now at Tufts University, having transferred from the University of Maine. She got a scholarship and a research position that she's incredibly excited about. She met Harrison, and I was nervous about what she would think. But by the end of the weekend, she pulled me aside. "He loves you," she said. "I can see it in how he looks at you, how he talks about you, how he treats you." "I love him too," I said. "Good," she said. "You deserve to be loved like that. After everything you've done for our family, after all the years you sacrificed for me and Graham, you deserve to be happy." Graham came to visit a few weeks after Hannah. She's 80 now, and her health is declining, but she's still sharp, still opinionated, still the woman who raised me. She met Harrison and sized him up with a look. "You're the man who gave my granddaughter a job," she said. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "And you're dating her?" "Yes, ma'am." She nodded slowly. "You better treat her right," she said, "or you'll have to answer to me." "I plan to treat her better than right," he said. "I plan to spend the rest of my life making her happy." "Good," she said. "That's the right answer." This morning, I woke up in our townhouse, in our bed, in the home we've made together. Harrison was already up making coffee in the kitchen. I walked in wearing one of his old t-shirts, and he handed me a mug. "Morning, beautiful," he said, kissing me. "Morning," I said. We sat at our kitchen table looking out at our garden. The sun was coming up. It was going to be a beautiful day. "I have something for you," he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "What is it?" "Open it," he said. I opened the envelope and found a check, a large check, made out to me, for $10,000. "What is this?" I asked. "I'm paying you back," he said, "for your jacket. The one you gave me that night in the rain 2 years ago, I never returned it." "Harrison, this is ridiculous," I said. "That jacket cost maybe $40. "I'm not paying you for the jacket," he said. "I'm paying you for the kindness, for the moment when you chose to stop when everyone else kept walking. That moment changed my life, Claire. It brought you into my world, and I'm grateful every single day." "You don't have to pay me for that," I said. "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." "Do something meaningful with it. Donate it to a cause you care about. Start a scholarship for aspiring journalists, whatever feels right." I looked at the check, then at him. "You've already given me so much," I said. I gave you opportunities, he said, but you earned everything you have. You worked for it. You proved yourself. Don't ever forget that. I won't, I said. He took my hand. There's something else, he said. What? He got down on one knee right there in our kitchen, and he pulled out a ring. Claire Matthews, he said. 2 years ago, you saved my life by stopping in the rain. But what you really did was save me from a life of isolation and emptiness. You reminded me what it means to be human, to care about other people, to love without reservation. Will you marry me? I felt tears streaming down my face. Yes, I said. Yes, yes, yes. He stood and kissed me and put the ring on my finger. And I thought about that night 2 years ago, running through the rain, late for work, exhausted and broke and barely surviving. Seeing a stranger collapsed on the sidewalk, making the choice to stop. That choice, that single moment of choosing kindness over convenience, changed everything. It led me here, to this kitchen, to this man, to this life. People sometimes ask me if I regret those 5 years I spent struggling, working 2 jobs, barely making rent, living in that tiny apartment with water stains and broken heat. And I tell them, no, because those years made me who I am. They taught me resilience and compassion and the value of helping others. They taught me to never take anything for granted. They taught me that sometimes the universe rewards you, not because you're lucky, but because you chose to be a good person, even when it was hard, even when it cost you something. Harrison likes to say I saved his life that night, and maybe I did. But what he doesn't understand is that he saved mine too. Not by giving me an apartment or a job or financial security, but by seeing me, by believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself, by showing me that one act of kindness can create ripples that change everything. This morning, as I sit here in our home, wearing my engagement ring, planning our wedding, I think about all the people who are struggling right now, who are working multiple jobs, barely making rent, dreaming of something better. And I want them to know that things can change, that one choice, one moment of choosing good over easy can lead to a completely different life. That kindness matters, that helping strangers matters, that stopping in the rain when everyone else walks past matters. My life is good now, better than I ever imagined it could be. I have a career I love doing work that matters. I have a partner who loves and supports me. I have financial security for the first time in my adult life. I'm writing again. I'm helping my family. I'm happy. And it all started with a choice to stop in the rain.
Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.